a croeso cynnes. Fi'n gwybod bod y tywydd ddim yn gynnes, ond croeso cynnes iawn i chi yma. Chi gallu clywed? I chi gallu clywed yn y clywed? Iawn? Okay, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome and also congratulate you. You have made a statement tonight by turning up here, you know, to quiz and to question what the Welsh Government are doing, not only to farming, but what they're doing to the rural communities. So I will have to read out a statement by the organisers to start. And I want to set the record straight on one or two issues that happened on social media during the last week. The statement issued in preparation for this meeting had some fundamental mistakes which had been checked prior to release. They apologise, and that is the organisers, for any distress this has caused for individuals and organisations concerned. They strongly believe, united we stand and divided, well, we lose or fall. I would like to introduce you. My name's Wyn Evans. I'm a beef and sheep farmer in the Ystwyth Valley in Trawsgoed, just outside Aberystwyth. I'm also a local authority member, former NFU Cymru Livestock Board Chairman, and I'm currently the chair of the Sustainable and Grassland event, which will be held in Trawsgoed in May. And there will be a very warm, cardy welcome for you all down there, and there'll be seminars relating to the issues that we're discussing here tonight. Okay, I'm chairing the meeting tonight. I've only had 24 hours notice, so bear with me, and I will try to do my utmost to chair the meeting as efficiently as I can. Okay, on housekeeping, you know, and the structure of the meeting, I'll go through this. Can you show respect, you know, to this venue? I'm very grateful that Welshpool auctioneers have allowed us to use this venue tonight. It's a classic venue, and, you know, and our thanks go out to them. Respect each other's views. There will be points coming from the floor. Some of you will agree with points, and some of you will disagree with some points. But please, please, please respect everybody's opinions. Any statements or questions, please come to the front so that we can hear you. And don't make any statements that last no longer, or questions that last no longer than 2 minutes. I'll do some remarks before handing over to Nick Fenwick, who was the former head of policy for the FAW, to go through some policy matters for you tonight. I'm a local authority member in Ceredigion, and I'm passionate about agriculture. I'm passionate about the rural community. My family have farmed in the Ystwyth Valley for over 500 years. So that means a lot to me. I'm ingrained, and that's one thing the politicians don't understand, is our link to the land and our link to the area that we live in. So it's important, you know, that that message is handed over loud and clear. I'm going through the budget reform currently as a local authority member, and our money from Welsh Government dwindles year after year after year. And, you know, and that's affecting everybody in this room. You know, we all depend on services in one way or the other. And, you know, it's getting difficult to provide those services because Welsh Government are cutting the rural budget, but they are looking after, you know, the budgets in the populous areas where Labour are strong. I sell my livestock, a place like this, I sell my livestock through a livestock market, Devil's Bridge, which is, you know, this is a very smart venue. It's, you know, got all the infrastructure required for the market. But what does the market is what I'm seeing in front of me tonight, the people and the community. That's what does the market. And we can't let that dwindle. We have to look after that, and that's why I'm so proud that you made the strong statement tonight here, to come here to say enough is enough. Okay, and there are lessons. Food security. Food security isn't even on the National Assembly or the Senate's agenda. History shows us food security on this small populated island is vitally important. In 1939, we imported 2/3 of the nation's food. It is important that we don't go back to that. 30 million people lived in the UK in 1939. We're approaching 70 million here now. The Dig for Victory campaign turned us into the most efficient farmers within the globe. And we should hold our heads up high and be proud of that. The sustainable farming scheme is a threat to that. It's a threat to the, productive farm, a threat to places like this, and a threat to the rural communities. TB, I'd like to congratulate, for those of you that saw Fermio a fortnight ago, I would like you to all to give a round of applause to that family that put themselves out there to be filmed on a very dark day within their farming life. So just show them an appreciation. And can I thank Fermio and Maynard Howells and the team for doing that item. I speak to people outside farming, outside agriculture, who have seen that item and they've been heartbroken. I watched that item the following morning. As I had something on that night, I watched it, and I can tell you, I was in tears. So, well done them. The blanket approach of NVZ, which Nick will discuss, it's a draconian measure, that hasn't worked in Northern Ireland. When that date comes, you can't farm by dates. Impossible to farm by dates. So, we do need to ask that question. The union did take a judicial review and lost, unfortunately, but, we do need to look at that again. But I will hand over now, in a minute, to Mr. Nick Fenwick to go through the three topics. We're going to cover three topics here tonight. We're going to cover SFS, we're going to cover TB, and we're going to cover NVZ. I will then pause. We will take some questions from the floor regarding these issues, and then we will go down to outcomes, and we will be looking for ideas from you as an audience on outcomes. Apart from thanking Welshpool Markets here, I also want to thank the organisers of this event tonight, and in all fairness to them, we've been in what we call the blue room at the back there, and everybody's been shaking like a leaf, including me. And I'd like to thank Rhys Parry of Pennal and Gwyn Edwards of North Wales for organising this meeting tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now, and he can go through some policy areas with him. Okay, thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Wyn mentioned the Dig for Victory campaign during the Second World War, and I'm going to go right back to that point. Back after the Second World War, we had legislation that protected farmers, protected food security, protected agricultural workers, and that legislation was effectively in place all the way through, including when we joined the CAP and the European Union, right through until when we left the European Union. And then that protection has now dissolved. We don't have a ring-fenced budget anymore for agriculture, and we don't have that protection in place that we had for 70-odd years. So that's the scenario we find ourselves in. We don't have that legal umbrella anymore protecting us. We had promises. The Conservative, and I'm going to turn some of the attention now to Westminster government. I know there's plenty that the Welsh government has to answer for, but we can't let the Westminster government off the hook. That government, as it is now, in their manifesto in 2019, promised that they would maintain the agricultural budget. Within about a month of the publication of that manifesto, they had cut £42 million of Wales's budget. Within another 10 months or so, they cut another £89 million off Wales's agriculture budget. And on the 27th of October 2021, they announced a further annual cut of £111 million per year for the years up to 2025. So altogether, we've lost £250 million. With inflation, that's about £380 million that we have all lost as an industry. That's an average of around £15,000 or £20,000 per farm, less money that we have had compared with what they promised us. So that's the background in terms of Westminster government. That same government, in the same period, signed trade deals with Australia and with New Zealand that were the most liberal trade deals probably ever signed in the world, that allow more meat to be imported, and then a limitless amount of meat to be imported from those countries after a set amount of time. So we find ourselves in an incredibly precarious situation in terms of those trade deals, which are effectively irreversible. We turn now to Wales. Many of you will have heard that 37.5 million has been cut from the Agriculture and Rural Affairs budget just before Christmas. We've had 3 consultations. We're now in the middle of the third major consultation on the future of the schemes that we rely and that the Welsh Government acknowledge is responsible for 80% of farm incomes in Wales. And we have modelling outcomes published in relation to their plans. And what does that projection tell us? It estimates that average farm business income in Wales will fall by £9,000 or over £9,000 on average, from an already paltry level, an already extremely low level. That means a total loss of about £200 million for Welsh farmers. Overall output would be reduced by £125 million. The number of livestock in Wales would fall by 122,000 livestock units. That's a massive issue, not just for farms themselves, but for Welshpool market, for our slaughterhouses, for all the supply chain. The impact is not just in terms of farmers, it's in terms of the entire fabric of our rural communities. On-farm labour is estimated to fall by 11%, which is about 5,000 jobs. But that's just the jobs on farms. We're talking about jobs in the wider rural economy not being accounted for in that figure. So it could be a multiple of that. And those are the modelled impacts, the estimated impacts of the Sustainable Farming Scheme and all its rules. Now, Wyn mentioned NVZs. It was estimated when they did the impact assessment for NVZs that it would cost £360 million in infrastructure costs alone for the industry, and they still pushed it through. That figure is more of a cost than the total income from farming in the previous year. That's a massive, massive impact, and I don't believe any other industry would be prepared to accept that impact, nor do I think that the Welsh Government would push such a cost through for any other industry. £450 million that figure now equates to when inflation is taken into consideration. That is almost £500 million in costs on top of all the other impacts that we see in the industry. Bovine TB is obviously a huge, huge issue. The millions and billions of pounds that the taxpayer has paid on it is a disgrace, because this is a government policy that has failed to control TB. But what about the hundreds and thousands of, or hundreds of millions of pounds that it has cost farmers that they are not compensated for? Not to mention the emotional impact that it brings with, that comes with it. And bear in mind, the scientific evidence on this is absolutely crystal clear. Yes, cattle are a source of the problem, but so is wildlife. And Welsh Labour has now admitted that its policy is simply to ignore wildlife irrespective of the scientific evidence. So those are the three major issues we believe, I think that's fair to say, we believe are top of the agricultural agenda. But the one thing I would emphasise is, whether it's TB that concerns you, or whether it's the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit that concerns you and makes you really angry, if the sustainable farming scheme goes through in its current form, there will only be a fraction of current farmers left to worry about these things. Everyone else will have gone. There will be thousands less people in the industry. People will not be able to afford to run their farms. So people, now is the time to stand up and be counted as regards this scheme and how unacceptable it is. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Nick, for giving us an insight into policy figures. And they're important figures, because at the end of the day, they matter to the industry, to you standing there, whether your farm is viable or whether your farm becomes a loss-making business. And we stand here tonight, shoulder to shoulder, with the steel workers in Port Talbot. And we have to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. And the only comfort they have is that it's an overseas company that's, ended their jobs, ended their careers, and brought this misery to Port Talbot. In Wales, within this policy, and what's unfortunate, it's our government that's doing this to us. It's our government that's letting us down. It's our government that doesn't understand really what we're about. And, we do need to look at this, to think about it carefully, and to think about the actions that we're going to take. I hope I don't lose this notepad over the edge, or I'll be totally and utterly lost here. Okay, I am going to open the floor now to questions, to statements. Gareth there has got the megaphone. Gwyn, well done, Gareth. Where's Gwyn? Okay, could I ask, we have asked politely, if we can stop, if the media can stop filming while the questions are being asked.